Welcome to New Possibilities. I speak truth to power without fear. Today I'm going to continue my discussion about the Michael Slager trial. That's the case involving the murder of Walter Scott. And for those of you who don't know, this is the case involving an African American man who was stopped for having a broken tail light. The brother, fearing that he would be arrested for outstanding child support, he ran from the police officer, and the police officer shot him in the back multiple times, killing him. And after shooting him, he planted a taser near his body. Now, this case went to trial. The jury deliberated for 22 hours over 4 days. The case ended with a mistrial. And now you have the jury foreman, Dorsey Montgomery, speaking out, explaining exactly what happened during jury deliberations. So he's giving us insight. Dorsey Montgomery was the only black person on the jury. And many people have expressed their outrage against this man, and I understand why, and I agree with them. And I pointed out some of these things in my first video on this subject. The problem with Dorsey Montgomery is the fact that he ignores the role that race played in this case. Here you have a white officer who shoots and kills a black man. Shoots him multiple times, an unarmed black man who was posing no threat at all at the time when he was shot. Now, there's some issue about some struggle over a taser before this shooting. But at the time when Walter Scott was shot, he was far away, at least 18 feet away from Michael Slager, before Michael Slager shot him multiple times in the back. It is uncontested that Walter Scott was unarmed. He did not pose a threat to the officer or to the community at the point when he was shot and killed like a dog. So you have this black man, Dorsey Montgomery, actually having the nerve to say that this doesn't have anything to do with race in terms of the deliberation. He said race is an issue in society, but it wasn't an issue within that jury room. And I just find that to be hard to believe. Given all this going on, all these police shootings of black men, given the history of South Carolina, a racist state that's the heart of the Confederacy, a state that has a long history of racism, both in the past and in the present. I mean, this is a state, after all, where Dylann Roof killed innocent people in a church. So, I mean, this notion that this didn't have anything to do with race is absurd. I mean, here you have a situation where the jury deliberated for 22 hours over 4 days when we had video evidence that this man, Michael Slager, committed murder. And then another thing that's really troubling about what Dorsey Montgomery said is the fact that he said that there was no malice. How can he reach that conclusion, given the fact that you have a man that shot somebody who did not pose a threat, shot him in the back multiple times, and then planted a taser near this man's body in order to cover up this crime, in order to rationalize and justify the killing of an unarmed black man? How can anybody in their right mind conclude that that was not malicious? So I understand the hostility that people have towards this juror, towards this black man. I understand full well why people have referred to him as a coon, as a sellout, and other derogatory terms. I understand why they refer to him that way. This man projects weakness. He does not project strength. This man is effeminate. He is weak. So I understand why people are outraged about this. And also some recent facts came out about charges against him. He was charged, and I'm talking about Dorsey Montgomery. There were pending charges against this man while he served on the jury in this Michael Slager case. This man was charged with breach of trust, and apparently he was charged with this for giving away $5,500 worth of discounts for cell phones. And the charges were dropped 3 weeks into the trial. And the thing that's interesting is that they were dropped on the day that he was appointed to be the foreman of the jury. Now, this raises a lot of questions. People are basically saying, how can this happen? How can someone with pending charges serve on a jury? And they are also implying that there was some kind of conspiracy between the prosecutors and this particular jury. Like they're implying that somehow there was some kind of quid pro quo where they dropped his charges in exchange for him serving on this jury, and implying that he had something to do with the outcome in this case. And so far, I haven't seen any concrete evidence of such a conspiracy. I mean, according to the articles that I read, the chief prosecutor in this Michael Slager case said that she was not aware of how the charges were resolved or the circumstances under which they were resolved. And she wasn't aware of the reasoning behind why the charges were dropped and all that kind of stuff. And she had no communications with the other prosecutor that actually dropped the charges. So that's her story. And right now, there's no evidence to refute that, to contradict what she is saying. So at this point, there is no evidence of a conspiracy. Those are unusual facts. And then also, when you look at the disqualifications for serving on a jury, people can be disqualified for criminal convictions, but they can't be disqualified. It's not an automatic grounds for disqualification because someone has pending criminal charges against them. So that's not an automatic disqualifier for serving on a jury, but it is something that someone can use as a reason to strike a juror from serving on the jury. So, I mean, there are questions about this. I mean, those are legitimate questions, but so far right now, we don't have any kind of evidence of a conspiracy to put this man on the jury in exchange for dropping charges for him. There's no evidence of any kind of conspiracy to drop charges so that he could serve as the foreman and all that kind of stuff on the jury. So right now, I just can't run with that. I'm not going to embrace that because there's no evidence of such a conspiracy. And it frankly doesn't make any kind of sense. If people are trying to imply that somehow they wanted to get him on the jury to undermine the verdict and to prevent the case from going forward, it just doesn't add up. Because if that's the case, if the prosecution didn't have any kind of interest in pursuing this matter, they would not have already committed to bringing a second criminal case against this man, Michael Slager, in state court. So it just wouldn't make any kind of sense for them to try to sabotage it. And also, I mean, one thing that needs to be pointed out is the fact that this man, Dorsey Montgomery, despite my criticism of him, he was willing to convict Michael Slager of manslaughter. So he wasn't the holdout juror. And the thing that I find odd is that people have expressed more outrage towards this black man than they have towards the actual holdout juror who refused to find Michael Slager guilty of anything. I don't understand that. I mean, part of the problem is we are harsher on each other than we are on our enemy. We are so eager and so in a rush to attack our own, so eager to call people coons and all this and that. And I understand that. I mean, I've done it myself, but I think that too much of our energy is focused inward instead of outward. Too much of our energy is focused on each other instead of the actual person that's responsible for our oppression. I mean, here you have a white man who actually refused to find this man guilty of anything. A white man who said that he can't in good conscience find this man guilty or convict him of anything. And he cannot and will not convict him. But yet people are mad at the brother. And again, I understand their criticism. They are more mad at him than they are at that white juror who could not find any kind of guilt at all. And to me, that just doesn't make any kind of sense at all. I mean, here you have 5 or 6 people that were undecided in the face of all that evidence, in the face of this man being shot live on camera for the whole world to see, shot in the back multiple times, and then a gun planted near him, a taser gun planted near him. But nobody is expressing the same level of hostility towards those 5 undecided jurors. They're not expressing the same kind of hostility towards them. They're not even expressing the same kind of hostility towards that white man on that jury who refused to convict on any charges. And that doesn't make sense. I mean, murder and manslaughter, there are differences in terms of what kind of sentences they can face, someone can face under those different charges. And I'm going to get that information for you right here. Murder carries 30 years to life in prison, and manslaughter carries between 2 and 30 years. So even though manslaughter is a lesser charge, it is still a charge. I don't think it's an adequate charge, but there was a real possibility that this man could have served many years in jail, up to 30 years in jail. So for people to be so outraged at this black juror who was willing to convict this man of manslaughter, to me, it doesn't make sense for all the rage to be directed solely at him instead of at that white jury, instead of at the system that would allow there to only be one black man on that jury, at those jurors that were undecided in the face of all this evidence, at that one white juror who was a holdout, who because of that white juror, you have a mistrial. Because of those undecided jurors, you have a mistrial. It wasn't because of that black man, Dorsey Montgomery. That's not why you had a mistrial. So I just think that the anger is misdirected. It's not focused where it should be, and that's on these racist white people who allowed this man to essentially walk free for now. Now, one thing that people have pointed out that's a valid point is how this black man has he's become the public face of this injustice. And he's allowed himself to play that role, and that's despicable. So I do condemn that. He is providing cover for these people. He's not even going hard on this white juror who held out. He's not going hard on him at all because there is no rational reason why this white juror will hold out and say, well, he can't in good conscience find this man guilty. And from what Mr. Montgomery was saying, he was suggesting that somehow this white juror was holding out because he believed that this was a case of self-defense. I mean, how in the hell is this self-defense when you have an unarmed man with his back to the police officer, 18 feet away from this officer, not posing any threat at all? There is no self-defense. That's just outright murder. So in conclusion, I understand the rage against this black guy for being weak. I understand the rage against him for downplaying the significance of racism. I understand the outrage for him being the public face of this injustice. I understand all of that full well. I understand the outrage for him not going the extra distance to convict or to support a conviction for murder. I understand that, but our outrage should be more directed at a system that allowed this to happen. Our outrage should be directed at that white juror and those 5 other white jurors or 6 other white jurors who were undecided. So those are my thoughts on this issue. Tell me what you think. Please rate, comment, and subscribe. Peace.